Okay, so let's get right into it. There's this massive question hanging over the new generation of weight loss drugs like Ozempic, and it's a simple one. What actually happens when you stop taking them?
I mean, you've seen the headlines. These medications, Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, they've been absolutely life-changing for millions of people. They're this incredible new tool in the fight against obesity.
But is that weight loss permanent? Or does it all come rushing back the second you stop? That's what we're going to dig into.
All right, so to really get to the bottom of this, we first have to appreciate just how much of a game changer these drugs really are.
Okay, look at this number. The results from the big clinical trials were, honestly, they were staggering. Take the famous Step 1 trial for Semaglutide. Patients lost, on average, over 17% of their body weight. I mean, numbers like that, that's exactly why this became a global phenomenon.
But here's the thing. Those exact same really tightly controlled trials, they also gave us our very first and, frankly, kind of scary look at what happens when you stop the medication.
Listen to this quote from a lead investigator. He basically said, "We were surprised at how quickly people regained the weight." That says it all, right? The researchers themselves were shocked. This rebound wasn't just a maybe, it was happening, and it was happening fast and, well, dramatically.
And this chart just lays it all out in black and white. So you have that amazing 17.3% loss, but then for patients who stopped the drug, they gained back almost 12 percentage points. Think about that. That's basically 2/3 of all that progress gone in just a single year.
So, the big question is, why? Why does this happen? And this is so important. This has nothing to do with a lack of willpower. It's all about biology. Your body is literally programmed to fight back when you lose weight.
And this is where it gets really tough. When you stop taking the drug, you get hit with a double whammy. First, that appetite suppression from the medication, it just disappears. Your hunger comes roaring back. But, and this is the kicker, at the exact same time, your metabolism, which already slowed down to adjust to your new, lower weight, it stays slow. So you're feeling way hungrier, but you're burning fewer calories. It is like the perfect storm for regaining weight.
And listen, it's not just about what you see on the scale. The data is super clear on this. Almost all of those other amazing health benefits, we're talking lower blood pressure, better cholesterol, better blood sugar control, they all start to reverse course once the medication stops and the weight comes back.
So, for a long time, this kind of grim data from the clinical trials was pretty much all we had to go on. And it painted a pretty bleak picture. But you have to ask, right? Do these perfectly controlled, almost sterile trial environments really show what happens to actual people out in the real world? Well, it turns out there is a whole other side to this story. A massive new study from the Cleveland Clinic just looked at nearly 8,000 patients, and what they found was something totally different.
Now, this is what's so fascinating. Their findings seem to fly in the face of those early clinical trials. The researchers discovered that out in the real world, most people did not have a major weight rebound after they stopped their GLP-1 medication. You know, that's the class of drugs we're talking about.
Okay, so what gives? Why the huge difference? This chart right here is the key. See, in a clinical trial, the treatment just stops. End of story. But in the real world, people don't just sit back, they take action. A huge chunk, about 60% of them, either got back on the drug, switched to a different one, or got professional help with their lifestyle. They didn't just throw in the towel.
And just look at these numbers. It's wild. The patients being treated specifically for obesity, they only regained a tiny 0.5% of their weight after a whole year. And the patients with diabetes, get this, they actually kept losing weight. This is just a completely different universe from that 2/3 regain we saw in the original trials. So, okay, we have these two very different stories. How do we square them? Well, the answer really comes down to changing the way we think about obesity itself.
Yeah, experts are getting really clear on this. Obesity isn't some temporary problem that you just cure and then you're done with it. Nope. It's a chronic, relapsing, long-term condition. And just like any other chronic condition, it needs continuous, long-term management.
Here's the best way to think about it. Imagine you have high blood pressure. You wouldn't take medication for 6 months, see a good reading, and then just throw the pills away, right? Of course not. You'd know your blood pressure would shoot right back up. Experts are saying we have to start thinking about these weight loss drugs in the exact same way.
So what that really means is that the ideal goal is continuous treatment. But look, we all know that stopping is sometimes unavoidable. Cost, side effects, whatever it is.
If you have to stop, there are ways to soften that landing. Doctors recommend tapering off the dose slowly. Don't just stop cold turkey. And at the same time, you've got to seriously double down on those lifestyle efforts, ideally with some professional support.
And don't underestimate the power of that lifestyle support. It's actually incredible. One study found that if you add structured exercise into the mix, patients were more than 4 times more likely to maintain their weight loss after stopping the medication. 4 times! That is a total game changer.
So, this is how we bring those two different stories together. That biological rebound effect we saw in the early trials, it is absolutely real. But the real-world data shows us something hopeful, that when the treatment continues, whether that's with another medication or with intense lifestyle support, that rebound can be kept in check.
And that really leaves us with one final huge question, doesn't it? If we know that lifelong management is the real key to success here, then what has to change in our healthcare system, in our insurance policies, to actually make that possible for everyone? Something to think about. Thanks so much for joining me.